The following is a segment from the television series In Search of the Divine, produced by the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, St. Paul Province. For more information, visit www.insearchofthedivine.org. Maybe we all have our dark night of the soul. We may think we go it alone, but as this story of a mother and her son reveals, the journey toward healing is often a shared experience.
Grew up in a loving family, had all my needs all my needs provided, all my wants given. Had a great childhood. Moved to Roseville with my mother when they got divorced. And that's the start of my alcohol and drug journey. There had been things that had happened in my life that I didn't exactly like or appreciate. And so I rebelled. It's the simplest way I can put it. I turned my back on God.
Later, Mike explained that as a young boy, he had been sexually abused by a neighbor.
Started smoking pot with this guy at school, and I said that I wanted to do that ever since I took that first puff. I sold my dreams, my hopes, and everything that I had for a feeling that wasn't real.
Mike turned to alcohol and drugs. He quit school, struggled in the military, and couldn't keep a job. Eventually, he became homeless, seeking dry places throughout the city to sleep.
That was my solution to my problems. Alcohol and drugs were my solution.
He looked really rough when he started living on the street. And, he was dirty, smelly, and his complexion was terrible, and he was growing a beard. I remember he was growing a beard, and his hair was really just scuzzy and just unkempt. And but I would give him a loan, and he would continue on his way, and I would go home knowing that, well, he's still alive.
My motivation for everything, fear. Straight fear. Fear of the unknown. See, I would have rather stayed a drug addict, even though it was bad, and I knew it was bad.
Every now and then he would call and he would need, I can't make my rent, I can't do this, I can't do that, so I would help him out. And it was only after he was truly having problems that I realized that they have a word for me, and that's an enabler. And it's not a nice thing to be labeled.
I would have drained him dry. Tough love has a bad rap. It doesn't feel right to shut the door on a loved one. But, with drug addiction and alcoholism, you need to. Hardest thing there is, but yeah, you gotta do it. If it was my son, my daughter, oh yeah, tough love all the way. For a loved one that's going through something like this, that's a taker instead of a giver, you gotta shut the door on that. At some point, you have to shut the door on it, because as long as they're getting a free ride, as long as you're cleaning up their mess, they're going to continue to make that mess. And until they have to clean up their own mess, they're not going to change.
It would be nearly 4 years before Mike reached bottom.
34 years old. I was on the streets. I stayed at a friend's house, which really wasn't a house, it was an abandoned bus. That night I lay down to sleep, and I asked God to end it. And when I did that, my conscious thought was, take me out of my misery, kill me, let me die in my sleep. I was pretty high that night. And I woke up the next day. I wasn't dead, but that next morning, afternoon, there was something different. I couldn't do it anymore. Everything that I had used up to that point, every drug, crystal meth, heroin, alcohol, everything stopped working. So then I'd substitute it for something else that would work. That morning, that crack made me so paranoid. I've never been so paranoid in my entire life. I knew that I couldn't go on. So I made a phone call to my mother, and which at that point was not an option to call home anymore. I had burnt that bridge up. And I said, I want to come home.
It was the call she had waited for.
Michael called to tell me that he wanted to come home and he wanted to get clean. That's all I needed.
In their own ways, Michael and his mom suffered, rejoiced, and learned about change.
I guess the biggest pearl of wisdom that I could give to anybody is you can't change anybody. And if a person doesn't have that desire to change within, there is nothing that a person can do to change that.
They learned about compassion.
How should you treat somebody that is on the street and is homeless? There's a lot of people on the street that have been evicted because they got laid off, you know. There's people on the street that are drug addicts and alcoholics too. The Medical Association defines addiction as a disease, you know. Would you run away from somebody that has diabetes? That's a disease. I'd say treat them like a human being, the same way that you'd want to be treated.
And they learned about the power of love.
I'm sure it was God's intervention because he called.
I always knew that there was a God. I always knew that. I was just really upset with him. Yeah, I turned my back on God during those days. I didn't want nothing from him. That's not exactly true. Let me back up. When I did want his help is when I was in jail or I was incarcerated, and I'd do the foxhole prayer, God, get me out of this one, and I'll never do it again. But, you know, there was no truth in that, you know. I didn't mean it. Not at all. Just get me out of this one. That's what I meant. Because I was going to go do it again. That was my solution to my problems. Alcohol and drugs were my solution. They weren't my problem, they were my solution. I get on my knees every night and thank God for the day. Whether it was a good day or a bad day. If it was a bad day, I thank him extra because that's actually a chance for me to learn something. I didn't get to where I'm at right now on my own. There's no way. There's no way I could be a part owner of a small business. I got no schooling for that. I barely made it through high school. You know, I never dreamed that I'd be where I'm at. I'm 39 years old now. I've been sober almost 5 years, and that's it in a nutshell.